Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be doing an EU5 video. Now this is not us playing the game. We have access to the game currently. This is not us playing the game, and instead this is the IGN video. We're not allowed to show the game, but we're allowed to talk about the game. And so we're going to be peeking around the game, looking at the tech tree, talking about the different ages, because this is a topic people were interested in, specifically with an emphasis on wanting to learn more about the later ages and how the game transitions and has a little bit of a different feel. And so that's what we are going to be covering today. Now, before we get into it, if anyone was interested in pre-ordering the game, and they think they're going to be doing so, and they wanted to support the channel, you can pre-order with our code GENERALIST in all caps on the official website. There will be a link down below, and this would help out the channel. It doesn't give you a discount, and it is a little bit inconvenient, but this would give us 12% of the sale. Another thing is, if you have another content creator you like more, check to see with them if they have a code, and also, if you want those buckets of ducats to be going to the developers themselves, don't use anyone's code, and instead just order the game kind of normally. As far as I understand, what will happen is you will be emailed a code when the game releases to activate, so it is a little bit more inconvenient. But with that said, let's get into talking about the ages here. Alright, so first up we have the Age of Traditions, and with this we kind of want to introduce a couple of concepts that are going to be present, kind of as a theme throughout all of these, although each age kind of has its own individual theme. And the first is that expansion is throttled, and that throttle gets decreased more and more as you go through the ages, and eventually expansion becomes very, very, very cheap as you get later and later. And also control is harder to propagate out early, and this incentivizes you to be smaller and incentivizes more of a feudal system. And finally, economically speaking, you are generally more resource-oriented at the beginning, and then you will be more production-oriented at the end, with building tall cities and this type of thing. And what your material conditions are will kind of determine when you want to start phasing towards the other thing, towards a more capital-based economy. For example, if you have really good resources, someone like Mali, you maybe stay on a traditional economy more, but these are kind of just the general phases that persist throughout all of the ages, as you kind of have a bit of a progression, and you can have a feel for it if you're kind of paying attention to it. Now, for the Age of Traditions, there are three institutions. The first two institutions, feudalism and legalism, we're not going to really go into very much detail because these are available to very nearly everyone except for the most backward starts. Some backward or more backward starts have partial completions of the tree, like Mali has a partial completion, if I recall correctly, of some of the tree. But what's going to happen here is, for the most part, everyone starts with feudalism and legalism. Meritocracy is the one that is set apart, and meritocracy starts in the East in China, and it does have some things available on it. But this age is only 10 years long, so it's really more of a preamble age. I'm not 100% sure if it is exactly 10 years, but what you get is, for all countries when the age is active, minus 10% control impact on war score. And what this is going to mean is that when your opponents lack control in a location, so let's say they have 50 control, so they lack 50 control, this is going to impact the war score, and you're going to get minus 10% cost. So if they have 50 control, you would get minus 5% discount on that. And this is a modifier that ramps up throughout the ages and is persistent all throughout. Now, for the tree, everyone will have access to a vanilla tree for Age of Traditions. That is going to feature, I think it's like 6-ish tech, so not a lot, but it's only a 10-year age. And then they're going to have like another 4 or 5 religious tech. And so your religion will inform like half your tech tree that you have available for this like 10-year period, but this is really just a preamble and not a big deal. There are going to be some nice little things in meritocracy though, not anything insane. There's going to be a tech that gives you a little bit of tax efficiency, but it's not huge. There's going to be, the big one is going to be a tech that gives you plus power projection. And you need to have more power projection than people you are trying to build buildings in their country in order to be able to build in their nation. And what this means is that it's difficult to build in someone like China or someone like India, kind of these trade buildings that are this type of thing, although the trade building might be locked out of Asia entirely anyways, and then it's going to be easier for them to build in other locations. So this is kind of a little bit of a thing. There's also trade efficiency tech, but for the most part, there's just some middling techs. I think the best one is going going to be one where it gives you +1 possible artist, which is generally kind of an expensive modifier to get, and that's going to kind of round things out. Meritocracy is not an insane kind of tech tree, but I do think you unlock it as everyone and you go for the artist as everyone, and it's pretty solid. But overall, the Age of Traditions is really a preamble and also a way of, for the starts you want particularly backward, a way for throttling them, because most people start with 2 of the trees fully unlocked, and if you give people trees that they just don't have unlocked, this is a way that you can make some starts start even further behind. Alright, so next up we have the Age of Renaissance, which has 3 institutions titled Renaissance, Banking, and Professional Armies. I think each of these institutions really kind of unlocks different play patterns, and so which one you get first is really going to throttle what you can do in that age. And I think that this is a common feature throughout all of the ages, where you're going to have certain things that are not available to you that become available to you as you unlock the institution, and this makes the institution pretty important. Now, before we've talked about being able to research roughly 70% of the texts. I think that number's a little bit higher, having played a little bit and started to understand systems a little bit better, this type of stuff, and also with some balance changes. I think the overall research speed could be throttled down a little bit, but maybe it's okay where it's at, and you're kind of at a point where you can, for the most part, get a lot of the branches of each tree, but sequencing is still going to be important because you're going to be, as we said, unlocking different kind of play patterns. So with Renaissance, well, let's talk about the bonuses for all countries while the age is active. Every country is going to get plus 25 cultural tradition. This is very impactful and makes Renaissance as an institution important. We'll talk about that. You also get minus 20% control impact on war score, up from minus 10%. This is, again, going to be ramping and making stuff increasingly cheap to take if your opponent doesn't have good control of it. You have plus 100% expected army size. I'm not 100% sure what this modifier does. I believe it is going to be the amount of army you can have before you suffer malice for going over it. Kind of like your max army capacity. I forget what it's called in EU4. I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe as time goes on, you can go up and up more and more. We have never really even approached hitting our army cap, or really needed to, and so we haven't really played around with that too much. You also get plus antagonism for religion influence, and this is another thing we're going to see is antagonism as the ages get later does ramp up a little bit in some various spots, and then you are going to have additional diplomatic capacity, which kind of ties in with one of the themes that's just kind of big about the age, which is that you're still in a feudalistic kind of way of approaching the world, you know, in terms of thinking of it in a historical sense or thinking of it in terms of previous Paradox games. You're like at the tail end of Crusader Kings, where everything's very feudal and you have lords operating in kind of different capacities in different areas. And at this point in time in the Age of Renaissance, or at the start of the Age of Renaissance, you can't really push very much control. So what the metagame is to have a lot of subjects, and the extra diplo capacity of this age allows you to push more subjects than you would otherwise be able to in this age. At the current level of balance, I think that diplo capacity being used on subjects is a little too cheap, and subjects should be a little bit more expensive, but absolutely expanding via subjects feels really much better, and expanding via subjects feels just generally better until maybe the 5th age. Now, to kind of talk about the 3 institutions in a little bit more depth, we have first banking, which is going to feature a variety of techs that are pretty important for establishing control. Namely, if you are going to be navally oriented, you're going to need a dock, or you're going to need docks for infrastructure in order to push control over maritime. You really go from having stuff cost like 20, 25 per sea zone you go through, down to costing like 8 or 3 or 5 or something like this. And the big part of that is the docks and also the bark tech. You do not start with a tech for a trade ship. You need trade ships in order to push control, propagate control, and so the bark is the first trade tech, and it is unlocked in the banking tree, and it is going to be supremely important. Also very important is going to be the counting house building. Now, the counting house building is going to give plus 33% crown power. Now, very early on, you will probably be under 25 crown power. It is easier to stay above it if you stay really, really small. We have another pressure that's helping to keep you smaller and smaller. But if you are under 25% crown power, you suffer this massive malus that gives a penalty for every percent you're under, a 1% penalty in production efficiency. I believe it's production efficiency. No, I think it's actually tax efficiency and also trade efficiency. And this penalty is super bad. It makes it so it really, really slows down your economy. And what the counting house does is effectively allows you to expand out a lot more. What the dock and the bark does allows you to expand out a lot more, and it is not going to feel very good expanding kind of really very far at all until you go through the banking tree in the Age of Renaissance. Really, this is kind of the biggest spike you get in terms of how well you can push out control. Also present is the Pound Lock Canal, which is a building that has been featured in many of our videos, but it has been significantly nerfed. You used to be able to use it to get minus 25% of proximity cost by building 5 levels of it. Now you are throttled to a single level, but still, it is going to be a strong building. A couple other good things in this tech tree, like construction speed. Very often, especially in the early game, you do not have enough urban locations one of the things you'll be throttled on in terms of urban locations might actually be your ability to construct fast. So construction speed does feel pretty nice. The Pound Lock Canal is pretty solid, but the really two big ones are going to be the bark and the counting house. But there's another thing that's also very important, and that is going to be trade range. There is 2 trade range techs in banking. And trade range is really important for pushing institutions. So if you have access to banking, you can get access to other institutions a lot better, which is a bit of a catch-22. And this is one of the features, because banking will almost always, if not always, spawn in Italy. What this will do is this kind of constrains a lot of the institutions to that region, and it is, you need the banking to get the banking is one of the really kind of rough catch-22s, and being able to get trade range is really, really nice, but also trade range really makes you able to make better use and value out of your resources. Very often you will have a glut of certain resources, and you can't get full value out of them until you get trade partners further out. Remember, RGO's extremely good early on, and the thing is, you collapse the price of the RGOs and you're building. Someone like Russia, you just have a bunch of fur. The fur is like minus 75% in price. It's worth nothing. And then you get this trade range tax from banking, and then you start getting to take off. And so banking is going to feature a whole lot of things that are incredibly important. Next up, we have Renaissance. Now, remember earlier we said this cultural tradition modifier plus cultural tradition was relevant for the Renaissance tree, and that's because cultural tradition is like cultural defense, and then influence is like cultural offense. In order to be able to incorporate areas fully and core them, you need to get their culture accepted. Getting culture accepted requires either culture conversion, or it requires you to accept their culture. Both of these things, I'm pretty sure the acceptance at least is, I know the conversion is, are influenced by the relative value of your influence to their tradition. So their tradition's defense influences your offense, and because this age features more defense, it is going to be, generally speaking, harder. Oh wait, we got a loading screen, not like this. So as we were saying, it's going to be, generally speaking, harder to conquer places, incorporate it, and then assimilate it, because everyone has more cultural defense, and you don't really actually have any cultural offense yet, just a little bit that you get from libraries. And so what, in effect, Renaissance is going to do for you is going to unlock your ability to assimilate, and this ability will be dramatically improved in the Age of Discovery once the cultural tradition goes away. And as a consequence of this, you do want to play a little bit more through subjects through Renaissance, the age, but you do unlock a little bit of pushback with the institution. So the institution gives you a little bit of cultural influence, first off, and then kind of eventually it's also going to unlock art as a mechanic, which is going to give you bumps of influence here and there. Although art is a little bit better at giving you defense, but eventually you're going to get to University Tech, which unlocks the very big university building, which gives you a lot of literacy, specifically on burghers and nobles. And this is going to be valuable as long as you are industrializing, or if you're relatively tall. If you have more peasants, this proportionally is raising your literacy less, but if you have less peasants, this is going to raise your literacy a lot, and it's going to push your research speed a lot, but also you get a lot of influence from universities. It also unlocks the education law, which is going to allow you to give direct literacy to peasants and laborers and this type of stuff, increasing your literacy, allowing you to research faster. So this is going to be a big deal. Also, early on, base values, you start with 2 cabinet members, and very important, you get an additional cabinet member and an additional government reform from the Age of Renaissance, which also gives you a lot more leeway in what you can do, especially with we're talking about the expansion. If you have to incorporate and then assimilate, that's 2 cabinet actions, that's 2 cabinet members. If you have 50% more cabinet members, that's going to be a big deal. I think we mentioned that you unlock artists, but also in there is going to be an additional cultural capacity. Base value is going to be 1, which means you really can't accept a lot of cultures, and then adding an additional 1 is going to mean you can accept more, which as long as they're accepted, you can core these areas. And so Age of Renaissance is going to be pretty, or sorry, not Age of Renaissance, the institution of Renaissance is going to be pretty important. Also, depending on what you go, if you go the admin tree, which I think is the best, you also get a tech which gives you 5% literacy. So that's a pretty big deal as well. Also, we have professional armies. Now, before this, unless you were playing someone who specifically has a barracks, there is no spammable building that gives you manpower that you can build. You just have the 1 sergeantry building that you can build in the capital, and so effectively you can't have a standing army. And so the pattern that professional armies unlocks is being able to have a standing army. Now, a standing army is not, in the Age of Renaissance, going to be as good as levies, but you have a lot fewer of your pops die when you're using a standing army. And so using a mix of standing army and levies in this age specifically is going to be really, really nice for diluting the pain of going to war in terms of lives lost, because losing pops is really uncomfortable in the long run. In the short run, it's really not going to be that big a negative, but in the long run, it is going to be a big deal. But also, you gain access to the gunsmith building and the cannon maker building, and you gain access to firearm soldiers, and you also gain access to cannons. You don't have access to cannons before this. Sieging down forts is really, really bad without the cannons, and so this is going to be a very, very acute pain point until you get these up and running. And so in a kind of sense, you unlock both your ability to really save a lot of your pops from dying when you wage war, and you also, although you can really lean on the extra levies from Parliament, although I think you're using your Parliament juice on a lot of other stuff in the early game, that it might not even be worth it. And so, to some extent, this unlocks going to war being a lot cheaper as well. Yeah, this is going to be... it's going to be a good one for, obviously, expansion. Important power spike. I do think that in every other age, probably the power spike you get off of getting the first level of what is it, the army of the next tier, because it doubles how many soldiers you can fit per width, is going to be bigger than this age, but it's still also pretty substantive. I also do think regulars plus levies actually just beats levies as well, which is kind of like this weird little bit of a mashup. And then finally, there is a vanilla tree. This is the only age with a vanilla tree, and it doesn't require any institutions to go for, and it's just a lot of just kind of solid stuff. A lot of stuff that is unique to your country. If your country has unique content, will be in the vanilla tree, and the vanilla tree is really, really important for people who aren't in Europe, or people who aren't in Western Europe specifically, because you are going to be in the vanilla tree. After the first 10 years, in the Age of Traditions, you're going to be in the vanilla tree for some time while you're trying to get your institutions. Playing as someone like Russia, you might not get your institutions for the first 100 years. This was our experience playing as Ethiopia and Mali. And so, because you need the trade range to get the institutions, and guess what? you don't have the trade range because you don't have banking, and so this gives you stuff to research while you are waiting for the institutions that really have the better tech, but there's a lot of solid stuff in the free tree as well that is going to be worth researching, and some of, depending on your age focus, for every age you get to focus admin, diplo, or you get to focus on military, the thing we never focus on. You are also going to have some of those techs pop up in the free tree as well. I think max RGO size, city upgrade cost, and these are kind of the best ones that are featured in the free tree. There's like a lot of solid stuff, but nothing that really opens up new gameplay patterns, just stuff that's just relatively strong. RGO size in towns and cities. This is pretty important, especially early on, because you don't have a lot of that modifier, so plus 10% actually represents plus 10%, and also, in the early game, RGOs are really kind of very strong, and this is kind of the age we have the best feel for, because we've played it so many times, the Age of Renaissance. Probably at least 24 times, or at least 12 times all the way through, and probably 24 times at least halfway through. And so we definitely have a feel for this, and so this is going to be the Age of Renaissance here. And so let's get on to the next one. Alright, next up we have the Age of Discovery, which, as you might be able to infer, is a little bit about discovering the New World in terms of its overall theme, but you are going to have 3 institutions: New World, Printing Press, and Pike and Shot. Now, each age also gives access to a bunch of new government reforms, and there are some strong ones in here in particular. I do think that one called Universal Serfdom, which gives you +5 control in all rural areas, is particularly strong, but in order to go it, you actually need to be very serfdom-oriented, and I'm not sure if this stays strong for very long, but it's very good when a lot of your value is coming from RGOs, which is a little bit more concentrated earlier on in the game. It does require you to be on serfdom, so that's an interesting thing as well. Kind of bullish on that, and also just wanted to mention new government reforms get unlocked, and we have kind of made it so that we could get and slot in Universal Serfdom as soon as the new age hits, a couple of times now in Age of Renaissance, although maybe I'm thinking it's actually not so good because you have to give up a lot in order to slot it in, because you have to do a lot less free subjects. But that's a little bit of a tangent, so let's talk about the age. While active, you are going to get several things, but I want to have a little bit of point of emphasis. You no longer have the plus cultural tradition for everyone, so assimilating stuff is going to be cheaper than Age of Renaissance just by virtue of this bonus not being present for other people to defend. But you are going to give plus 0.25 monthly exploration progress, and related to that, minus 25% colonial maintenance. And before this age, really going heavy on exploration or colonization really isn't very strong. I think you probably just want to do 1 to 2 colonies max. It's a larger proportion of your income in Age of Renaissance. It doesn't feel very good, and the timeline to get your return is relatively long, and so I think you have to build up a base of a bigger income for it to really make sense as something to do anyways. And when we talk about New World, we will be talking a little bit about why you can't really go for the New World before this age anyways. There is also going to be minus 40% control impact on war scores, so we see that modifier double. So if a place doesn't have very strong control, you're going to have be able to take it a lot easier. Something we have done is intentionally isolated areas when taking war goals before, and then when they're cut off, you can now take them for cheaper because the control diminishes, although the AI doesn't like accepting treaties where they will have segments of their land kind of cut off. So it's cool that they added that modifier in, because that wasn't present on previous versions of the game. And the AI will fight you back a little bit if you are trying to do that intentionally. We see expected army size, plus 200%. So you can see here your capacity for having a bigger standing army is going to be bigger. And also, there is a levy, a levy maintenance modifier in here, where your levies are going to require more maintenance. And so levies are going to progressively get worse as the ages go on, and professional armies are going to progressively get better. And this is going to be one of the things where you are, through the ages, you you see this coming through. And in particular, we see our first thing in printing press, which we'll get to in a second, where we start being able to expand out a lot more. And so, or a second thing, really, because we talked about how there was infrastructure in the Age of Renaissance that allows you to push out more, same in this age as well. You also get a little bit more antagonism based on religion, and those are going to be the things present in this age. It also unlocks hegemons, which are going to be very strong, especially the cultural one, which will allow you to culture convert entire areas, which are a collection of maybe 5 to 10 provinces, which are a collection of 5 to 10 locations. And so this also is going to really kick up expansion if you manage to become the cultural hegemon, which is kind of easy-ish if you push a lot of libraries and universities. It also unlocks a new value, outward versus inward, where outward, the kind of key feature that it is giving you, it's going to give you less cultural tradition, so you have less cultural defense. But the key thing that it's going to be giving you is extra power projection, which allows you to do more overseas stuff in other people's nations, especially if they are on parity with you or with tech. I think if you have +5 over them, you get to build inside them. If certain conditions are met. I'm not 100% sure on how that works, but also plus 100% colonial migration. I do think outward is generally weaker than inward, though, because inward gives a little bit of crown power, but the really key feature it gives is up to +5 max control. I think that is very strong. And so even when we're playing the colony game, we've been going inward every time. It does give you a colonial migration malice, which means you really need to stack up a lot of bonuses to overcome the malice before colonization starts kind of picking up speed. But with that said, let's kind of go through the institutions and talk about how they unlock new kind of play patterns. So the first is the New World Institution, and there are a ton of colonial modifiers in here that are both related to how much people migrate, how cheap stuff is, how big a range you have. You really can't colonize very effectively before you have New World, and in particular, there is one tech that allows you to do open sea exploration. Before this, and it gives you a ton of colonial range, but before this, it's really hard to discover the New World, and it might be impossible. I think you could do it through Greenland or Alaska. I'm not 100% sure, but this is going to be a very important kind of thing that I think people are complaining about via some of the content creator stuff before, that everyone was discovering the New World super, fast, and now you can't really do that. For a lot of countries that are going colonization, or if you're going colonization, this is just omni-important, and it has a whole bunch of stuff that deals with it. Very important for other nations, though, because we won't just get bogged down in just listing a bunch of colonial modifiers. Just trust me, there's a ton of them. For other nations in particular, you have more trade range in here. You are going to have Mercury Patio, which is a building that gives you doubles the output of gold and silver mines, and so it also requires mercury, which is an extremely rare resource. But if anyone's really gold or silver focused, this becomes a very important tree. It also has a tech for plus 75% iron output, which is huge early on. And so if you have a lot of iron going on, this is going to be a useful tech tree. But also it has, I think, the most powerful law in the entire game. There's a chance that, like the loud car outside, the value of this law might go away, or we hope that the loud car goes away, and that is going to be the rights of the burghers. So every single, in different ages it's unlocked, but every single estate, I think, has a rights law, and it is going to be rights of the burghers, which allows you to unlock more burgher max tax at a time where you don't have a lot of it. Max tax is a really important modifier for being able to get your economy going, and since economies kind of operate at the margin, it's hard to appreciate how good max tax is. Let's say you have an income of 100 ducats, and you have expenses that scale with your income for a variety of reasons of 80 ducats, so you're making 20, right? When you increase the amount of tax you're getting by, let's say, up from 20%, let's say your income is based on a 20% tax, and let's say you increase it to 25%, right? So you have 100 income, 80 in expenses. You go from 20% tax rate to 25% of tax rate. So you're increasing it by 25% relative to what you had before, in relative terms, not nominal terms. Now, you'll be making 125% income. But this doesn't increase your expenses. And so your expenses still being 80 means your margin goes from 20 ducats to 45 ducats, right? And so it's not just you're getting 10% more income, it's that you're getting more income at a point where what you are, your take home is a margin, and so just getting more income really is deceptive how good it is because of the margin. And the burghers, along with the commoners, the peasants, are going to be your biggest sources of tax. So really kind of bullish on this law. Even with people who we've not pushed colonization at all, we've still unlocked this institution relatively early, just to go for rights of the burghers, and then just went and did other things. And so that's kind of what's going on in New World. Again, just a point of emphasis, you can't really colonize or explore very effectively without this tree. And so if you don't have it, then those things, you kind of can do them, but it's not very effective, and it's really expensive. And even with them, it's still kind of expensive. The time to get your return is relatively long. So next up, we have the printing press. And for the printing press, let's start talking about a little bit about industry. So in the Age of Renaissance, you have a bunch of buildings, and the buildings they produce end goods using raw materials or other resources. And so they're not RGOs, the buildings are distinct. For the buildings, the thing you are going to have, there's like 3 things you're going to have shortages of the building-based goods. Everyone's going to have a shortage of gold if they don't have it, which that's how shortages work. Almost everyone's going to have like really kind of crimped on fine cloth, paper, and books. And so what this does, or what this means in Age of Renaissance, generally speaking, it's really hard for you to push a ton of libraries, which again gives you that cultural power, which allows you to convert areas and allows you to become cultural hegemon, which was we talked about was a very strong thing. The lack of paper and books kind of crimps you on this. Now, you can push it really hard and you can still make it happen. You can still get out libraries, but it's just like, it hurts. It's painful. It's difficult. Printing press is going to feature the first few next tier up buildings where you go from guilds to workshops, and you are going to have them on several things, a couple of military goods, like weapons, naval supplies, but also very importantly, in terms of proportion of your economy, you're going to be having, and this, by the way, all of this stuff can get rebalanced, is likely to get rebalanced, and none of this is finalized, this type of stuff. We're just kind of trying to talk through phases and how stuff change. But you are going to have paper workshop and the printing press shop, which means, it's a shocker that comes with the printing press. What this means is it really unlocks your ability to push libraries and universities everywhere. Once you get these researched, then these are incredibly effective, they're incredibly profitable, their margins on these buildings are much better. These buildings, like tax rate, also operate on the margin. We're not going to get into the math, but this is a very strong thing, is having the next tier up buildings in this portion of the tree. In fact, I actually think that printing press is the most important institution for this age, and is really strong. It also features the upgraded building for the trading center, which is going to be a better version of the trading center. And so it's not until the next age where we start getting basically the rest of the next level buildings in the Age of Reformation. We just get kind of a teaser in the Age of Discovery in those few. And it also features probably the most important tech if you are not super navally oriented, which is going to be paved road. Now, the gravel road reduces the cost of moving from one location in terms of proximity, in terms of control, reduces the base cost of 40 to 20. The paved road reduces it from 40 to 15. And so this is a huge deal because this pushes out the radius upon which you can establish control, which allows you to expand more. So now you don't need to be as feudal. You can be incorporating your subjects. You can still be getting a lot of value. To be fair, you can incorporate your subjects kind of starting in the Age of Renaissance, but it's just way more valuable, and you start to be able to expand out quite a lot more. And a lot of this is built on the back of infrastructure, such as the paved roads, at least being able to get full value out of the thing. And so this is kind of the really important things in the printing press tree. In particular, there's nothing I can think of that stands out really big other than those, but those are going to be very significant ones. And next up, we have pike and shot. Now, pike and shot is a little bit of an interesting one, because I don't think this necessarily unlocks too many new strategies or something like this, but to be fair, Miltech spikes are huge. And so if you are going to fight a big AI opponent, you wait until you get your Miltech spike and you try and get it before they have the tech, and then you just run over them. So in this one, you have early Arbiquisters, and we were kind of just playing a game as England or Great Britain, where we just waited for this tech, and then we went and we fought France, and we just ran through France. To be fair, we'd been fighting France for some time, but the point is we knew the tech was coming up, so we didn't declare a war that we were going to declare for some time, just because we knew we were hitting this power spike, and then the war was incredibly smooth as a consequence, rather than being a little bit messy. That's kind of like thing one. Just generally speaking, the Miltech, just the spikes on it are really strong. But you're also going to have the training fields. In the last tech tree, we mentioned how you get armories, which can be built in urban locations to give you manpower. Training fields can be built in rural locations to give you manpower, and so you kind of unlock the full suite of buildings to give you manpower, although there are upgraded versions of each of these. Also very important at the tail end of this tree is going to be kind of where quite a bit of juice is in some things. There's going to be a lot of RGO max level, or a little bit of RGO max level. No, wait, that's not on the right tree. Sorry. At the end of this, you are going to have +1 cabinet seat, +1 possible reform. Really kind of high power level. I think they shifted these over to the military portion of the tree because of that, because they wanted to add a little bit more power to it. And at the very end, you're also going to have dry dock, which is an upgraded form of the dock for getting a lot more sailors as well. So it's going to be very, very important if you're trying to dominate navally that you get dry dock, and if you're trying to dominate militarily and you want to have a large standing army, training fields is also going to be important, just unlocking the first level at least. And it's going to be really nice if you do go for this tree first, getting the extra government reform and cabinet seat. Incidentally, the extra cabinet seat is, if you're expanding a lot, is probably going to be the most important thing for incorporating more stuff, because again, base cabinet seats is 2. You've maybe unlocked 1 in the previous age, and we've frozen again, but that's okay, because that's kind of completing our discussion here for this next age, the Age of Discovery. Alright, next up we have the Age of Reformation, which is in the background. You're going to have the situations around the Reformation occurring if you're in Europe, so that is going to be a major theme, of course, what they were named after. Another thing is going to be, you are going to have the following institutions: confessionalism, global trade, and artillery. Also notable, something we haven't discussed, is all throughout the ages, the prices in the markets, they have a floor of 10% relative to base price, but the max percent goes up and up and up, and so moving goods around to satisfy demands, especially ones where you have this enormous plus 500% costing, is going to be increasingly valuable. At the Age of Renaissance, it's only plus 300% max. Age of Reformation is plus 500%, and we will really see kind of in this age, global trade is, shocker, going to really introduce a more global feeling of trade, whereas trade feels a lot more regional before this age. It really kind of kicks off. Now, for the ages, or for the bonuses you get in the age, very important is the first one, minus 25% trade maintenance. That is huge, because the value of your trade has to cover the cost of maintenance, and then you get value in excess of that. When you decrease trade maintenance, you are going to open up new possibilities in terms of trades that were not profitable before, that are now going to be profitable, and so going after trade-oriented stuff is going to be extremely valuable. You also get a control impact on war score, minus 60%. Again, we're seeing more movement in this direction. Also, you're getting minus war score from battles, and that modifier is increasing in size as you go through the ages too, and so battles become less occupation as sieges become more important, although this is the age where the sieges start to get and feel a lot less of a deterrent. They are incredibly a deterrent in the Age of Renaissance before you first get cannons, but artillery really kind of kicks things off quite a bit, and you have plus 33% pop conversion speed. Now, you are going to have negative conversion speed throttled by your lack of control, which is getting improved by roads and such. And so really converting at a mass scale before this age feels very difficult, and then during this age it feels much better. And so if you are going to have a conversion in Europe and you're going to go Protestant, this is the 100-year span to do it, because you want to make good use of the prop conversion speed modifier that's present here. We also get plus 300% army expected size, additional antagonism, but also influenced by culture. We see culture kind of picking up in terms of importance. We're going to get increased antagonism on culture via culture, and also increased antagonism for government type, and a higher modifier for antagonism based on religion. And of course we are getting a levy maintenance going up as well here. We also unlock the value mercantilism versus free trade, where free trade looks better. It gives you plus 2.5% trade efficiency, or it looks like a little bit better. But if you can be on the pull of one or the other, you want to be plus 100 or minus 100. And generally speaking, if you own a lot of markets, if you own the market center in a lot of spots, it's going to push you towards mercantilism. Mercantilism might be better. Now that we're looking at it, minus trade maintenance. That just might be a way better modifier. You get the negative trade efficiency modifier, but trade maintenance might just be... Minus trade maintenance might just be better. I don't know. This is a spreadsheet question, but the main idea is we are going to be getting a new thing. Also, mercantilism increases export cost from market for foreign traders, and so this allows you to control your own trade a little bit better. You also get some market protection. It forces your own provinces into your trade group, and so that one definitely makes quite a bit of sense. And so why don't we kick things off with the section of the tree that is going to be important, which is going to be confessionalism, or relevant to the Reformation itself, where you are going to be kicking things off with plus 10 conversion speed. Now, this doesn't sound like a big modifier, but the base value is 10, so this is doubling the base value, and there's really not a lot of good sources of flat conversion speed. The Muslim religion does get a building that gives plus 10, and it's available from game start, and so that's quite strong if you're wanting to convert, but you're not necessarily wanting to convert, because if you convert someone and they're a slave, then they become not a slave, so that's going to be a thing. You do have the rights of the clergy tech, which is similar to the rights of the burghers tech, except I think max tax on the clergy is not going to be as good, so you might go with one of the other options other than the one that gives you additional max tax, which is fine enough. You are going to have the very, very strong Supreme Court building present in this tech tree as well, where it is going to be giving you extra crown power, but minus 5% to proximity cost. And so this is quite a strong building. This is applying to if in your capital, applies to your entire country. And so the presence of both minus 5 proximity cost and crown power on a single tech makes it one of the really kind of strong techs. You'll see a little bit of power projection here, which is necessary for colonizing. You can colonize over other people if you have a big enough margin over their power projection, and so being ahead in tech allows you to colonize over other people, although if they have a lot of pops there, that's maybe a difficult proposition for finishing the colonization. We see an additional government reform and cabinet seat in this section of the tech tree as well, which is going to be quite strong, and we see a new kind of thing unlocked by this section of the tech tree as well, which is trade companies. You are going to need to come through this administrative portion of the tree, confessionalism, in order to unlock trade companies. Now, we don't have much experience with them. It is a subject type. I don't know if it's a building-based subject or if it is a territorial-based subject. They have a bunch of trade company-oriented buildings. We have virtually no experience with this, and so we're just going to leave it at that description. We might get an upcoming Tinto Talk or Dev Diary or something about it, which will be exciting when that comes. Now, we also have, in the next portion of the tech tree, siege artillery, which is going to be plus 1 just right off the bat, or the artillery tech, +1 artillery bonus versus forts. So your ability to peel through forts is going to improve a lot in this age. You are also going to unlock workshops for guns and get a little bit of an extra assault ability in the tree. And so going after forts is going to be easier, but also you unlock the next level of fort here in the Bastion, which was not possible before. You also unlock the next level of urban manpower building in the barracks, the cannon workshop as well, and you also have in this portion of the tree the military boats. I think all of the military boats, or at least the galleon. Something that's a common feature is that the military boats specifically kind of flutter around different portions of the tree. The units are always in the military section of the tree, but the boats can be in the diplo or the military section, and kind of, I think what they might actually do is they might have the galley in one section and then the heavy ship in the other, and then they flip them each time they cover them, which is a little bit of an interesting approach here, but this is going to really allow you to siege down quite a bit faster. I think Age of Absolutism brings the highest level fort, if I'm not mistaken, and so with that, maybe sieges are a little bit slower. We have not played much Age of Absolutism, so it's a bit difficult for us to speak to that specifically. Now, coming over to the next institution, we have Global Trade, which is going to pop things off with another minus 10% trade maintenance. So really reducing the friction here required for trade. And as you reduce the friction, obviously this makes more trades possible. And so at a certain point, you know, in previous ages, expanding, if your trades aren't making enough money, it doesn't make sense to build marketplaces, right? Because if the marketplace isn't the most profitable building for you, there are downstream considerations where the marketplace also stimulates the rest of your economy. But ignoring those, if the marketplace isn't making enough such that it's going to replace the cost of it fast enough, then it's not going to be a building you want. And so this is going to make it really hard for that not to be the case. I think the AI primarily builds on what it thinks is the most profitable. So the AI, I think, starts trading quite a lot more. We're building a lot more trade. The AI should probably build more trade either way. But we're going to have that, and that's going to be a feature in, as well as additional percentage trade range, which is really going to allow you to push trade globally. You're going to, if you've gotten trade range modifiers in some other places, you're going to be able to, from Europe, start being able to reach Asia, like China, Asia. Maybe not quite that far. I know as the Mamluks you could reach China, Asia a little bit before this. I think you'll be able to at least reach India as Great Britain, just to kind of give a frame of reference, and really kind of bringing new goods to the European market is extremely lucrative because those prices are jacked up, the consumer goods, to like the plus 500%, so the margins are enormous. And so that is a really big deal. But also a big deal in here is going to be, this is where the workshops kind of explode, and you start getting workshops for everything. So you're going to get off of kind of the base guild level production and start getting onto workshops. And this is also, I think, when for most countries, it starts being bad to be traditional oriented or traditionalism economy oriented and start to be better for being capital economy, where you are going to look to be building based, urbanized, building taller, this type of stuff. It is all over the place where you are getting different workshops: beer, tools, cloth, dyes, pottery, and each one of these is a tech, and they're quite a bit stronger because not only do you get a better PM, you can build taller levels of the building, getting more economies of scale. I think economies of scale also scales up per age, but I'm not sure exactly how it works. And so you're going to have a lot of these workshops. You're also going to have an additional level in Mercury Patio for the people who are really gold and silver focused in this tree. So someone like Molly is really going to value that type of thing. Deeper in the tech tree, there is an additional minus trade maintenance, and so if you have the minus trade maintenance from the age, these two techs that give minus 10% on top of that, you're getting minus 45%, and then another minus 10% if you're a full mercantilist. You also have the customs house. I think this might be the next level of trade center. No, this is not. This is the next level of place that has trade market attraction. Very importantly, though, the fine cloth workshop is at the bottom of this tree, and I think with the current consumption levels of the pops as they stand, they tend to eat a lot of fine cloth, specifically the nobles. I think the burghers will eat like a bit more fur. Fine cloth, out of everything that can be produced production-wise, has the highest base price, which makes it the most tradable thing, other than jewelry, which have a reduced cost to trade. But the jewelry are going to be harder to find inputs on. And so if you're looking to dump a ton of goods to other people, fine cloth is an interesting choice. And I do think specializing in fine cloth is going to be better than specializing in most other industries, unless you have a specific advantage for those other industries. And we see that at the bottom of the tree, and this is one of the things that we particularly focus on. There's another tech in here that is a bit of a curious one, which we haven't gotten to experiment with that too much, but it is going to give you proximity cost through OpenSea. -10, or quite a big chunk. And this is like an insane modifier, I think, which allows you to start pushing control overseas. But generally, as we've seen it, C nodes are really kind of turbo or very much impossible to push like a decent amount of control through. But we also haven't really played that deep in Absolutism and Revolutions. We haven't reached Revolutions yet at all. And so the Age of Absolutism, we've gotten to a couple times, and so I'm not sure as things get better if maybe this is something that you could push, and you could have a more global empire. There's also a little bit of trade range in this tree as well, for good measure, but it's called global trade for a reason, and so that is going to be a lot of things. Also just some like resource modifiers, this type of stuff, but for the most part it's going to be kind of where the economy starts shaping up, and in particular the tech trees get a little bit bloated after this age. That is, of course, the Age of Reformation here. Alright, next up we have the Age of Absolutism. Now, just as a bit of a kind of reminder to everyone, our sample size in the Age of Absolutism is relatively small. We've played this deep like 2 to 3 times on different runs, and so we don't necessarily have that good a grip on what's going on, the vibes, all this type of stuff. But with that in place, there's a few really interesting things going on in this age. The first is the court and country situation slash disaster. I think it's a disaster that I think is basically unavoidable in this age. You basically have to go through it, and this is going to be where the court is going to fight the crown effectively, or the estates are going to fight crown over the fate and kind of determining what's going to be happening for the nation. And this is going to be an age where you can rake back a whole lot of privileges, which is otherwise really expensive to do, consolidate things under crown power, and this is in particular something that I thought was weak to do on previous versions, and we've said it's weak to do, but it's been buffed in a lot of different ways, and so we are going to see some of that inside of the tech tree. Also, in terms of government reforms, one that I think is worth highlighting is peasant land inheritance. Looks pretty good. Gives plus 10% tax efficiency, but we were talking about earlier how this one that gave progression towards, or the eternal serfdom, it gave control in rural areas. Rural areas are getting worse and worse, right? As you tend to want to urbanize more and this type of stuff as time goes on. But this peasant land inheritance also gives progression towards free subjects, which is the opposite of serfdom. And so at a certain point, I think it's going to be the case that the serfdom one is kind of untenable. In terms of modifiers we're looking for, this has some stuff that we are interested in. I think in the Age of Reformation, there was a discipline reform that's probably really good. Just we are generally probably more likely to undervalue the military stuff. But the institutions for this age are going to be manufactories, scientific revolution, and military revolution. So it's almost kind of like having 2 admin trees and a military tree. I'm not sure between, I think manufactories is supposed to be the Diplo tree, or the Diplo inspired tree, but it really kind of feels like 2 admin trees. We are going to get decreased cost on revoking privileges. That is a very significant modifier. We are going to get minus 80% control impact on war scores. So if they don't have control, now it's approaching basically free. Plus 400% expected army size. extra speed of integration. Another feature of this age of absolutism is this is really when, more than any other age, I think, your ability to expand really gets unlocked. You also have minus 10 loyalty from subjects. Currently, maintaining loyalty on subjects doesn't seem that hard, but I think that this age in particular, colonies become way more important and way more valuable, which we'll talk about in just a second, but not for very long. You also get extra antagonism for cultural influence, extra antagonism for societal value influence, which this is a new modifier. The antagonism for religious influence decreases, and the antagonism for government type increases, and of course levies are getting worse. And also, construction sector max level +2. And so we're expecting economies to really pop off in this point as well. It starts to become a lot of construction, so this also gets to be a lot of clicking, which is just kind of something we're a little bit concerned about, is the volume of clicking you have to do in the later portion of the game if you want to actively manage the economy. But one of the reasons that I think colonies get stronger is because of this situation of Columbian exchange, which we're not going to talk about in too much detail because I think the devs want to talk about it, and we could talk about it way better once they show it off and there's pictures and examples of this type of stuff. But the idea is you can replace RGOs, and you can replace a new world RGOs with old world RGOs and old worlds with new world. And this is going to make colonies way more valuable as you need to feed the machine of the manufactories. The demand for inputs is going up and up and up because with manufactories you unlock the next tier of building, where you go from guild, workshop, and now you're in manufactories. I think this is the penultimate, generally speaking, one. And so let's kick things off talking about the manufactories institution here. Oh wait, we also unlock one briefly. We also unlock absolutism versus liberalism. Also, there's less, absolutism versus liberalism, where we are going to have, with absolutism, more revoke privilege cost. So getting more of this revoke privilege cost makes revoking very cheap. Also, I think court and country also gives more revoke cost. And so this effectively, you can just revoke all you want. Plus 100% crown power, if you're maxed out on it. Minus 5% estate satisfaction equilibrium, extra pop join threshold. And liberalism, the opposite, is going to give 5% estate satisfaction equilibrium and plus 20% cultural capacity. On the previous version of the build, I was bullish on liberalism. Now, absolutism's probably just better for a variety of reasons. One of which is that you can get a lot of support in the parliament with going absolutism. So, there's a tech in here that is going to affect that. So, kicking things off in manufactories, we are going to have maximum RGO size, which is very nice to have just at the front of the tree. Usually the front of the tree is not very good. And then we have manufactories, which are just going to be higher level versions of the buildings. There's going to be more demand for goods, generally speaking. And taking a look here, it is the penultimate tier of building, and we are seeing kind of the starting of the turning of industrialization a little bit, and this is why I think inputs are going to be so important, and it's going to be hard to get inputs. But if you can, move cloth to the new world, this type of stuff, and make cotton there, and then ship it back to make clothing, you have the triangle exchange, you have the improvement of all the RGOs in the Americas, which are just terrible, or just aren't very good to begin with, and this type of thing, and just an increased importance of this because the beast back home demands input goods, because I think you are not going to be able to expand out the RGOs as much, and as you lean into manufactories because they're better, your ability to export your own RGOs gets worse. And so I do think that this is going to be some of the feeling. I don't know how deep you're going to feel it is maybe the thing, but I just don't have enough as a sample size. We have better tooling companies, or we just have manufacturers. I think it's for just very nearly everything, if not everything. The tree is super, super wide, but you have more research speed, so even though there are way more techs, you should be able to get through it. I don't know to what degree you want to specialize or what degree you want to research everything, but that is going to be what is mostly present in the manufacturers thing. There's a few really big goodies buried in here, like the minting office, which is an urban version of the bailiff. The bailiff gives 30 proximity in rural areas. The minting office gives 40 local proximity in urban areas, which means if you have a minting office and it's cored, so minting office is 40 proximity, so that's 40 control. If it's cored plus another 20, that's 60 control. If it has, let's see, a temple, that's plus 5 control, so 65. If you're inward, that's another plus 5, so that's 70. And I think there's a couple other sources of flat control. But you can get 70 flat control with 0 connection to your capital in urban areas with the minting office. So I do think that is one of kind of the more important techs in this portion of the tree. And it is going to also kind of encourage this idea where absolutism is the age where you really start to conquer around a lot, and where you push things in terms of military, where you kind of are to some extent uprooted from this like power-based level thinking, and you start to think a bit more globally. The minting office does help out with that, because if you can have 70 control in a city that has a bunch of stuff in it, why not just take the city instead of building it yourself? And so that's mostly what's present in manufacturing. Poking around the tree, we're not seeing anything that looks too insane in here. That is not a portion of, it's just manufacturers for basically all the things. We do see lead output plus 100% on a tech, but that's going to be at a plus naval range too. But let's move on to the next segment, which is going to be scientific revolution, which kicked things off with plus 10% max literacy. We had plus 10% max literacy as well, I think in the Rage of Reformation as well, if I recall correctly, at the start of confessionalism. No, not that one. There's another tech tree that starts out with plus 10% literacy. I forget which. And we have some juicy laws in here, like press laws, which I think will give you a little bit more literacy, if I recall correctly. But the really big one, and the one that makes expansion really easy, is the integrate area cabinet action gets unlocked in this section of the tree. And so instead of integrating just a province, now you can integrate 5 to 10 provinces simultaneously. And this is really going to open things up quite well in terms of what you can do. You can also assimilate area if you're a cultural hegemon. I think in single player you're really going to be fighting for that, but in multiplayer that's not like a reliable thing necessarily. We also saw a max level of trade company headquarters, which I don't know exactly what that does, because we don't understand what the trade companies do that well at this juncture. There's economic policy law. There's another iron output plus 100%. There is the next tier in marketplace in this. And also, very importantly, there is the tier 3 road, which instead of giving minus 25 proximity, gives minus 30 proximity flat. And so this is effectively increasingly effective with the paved road as well, because the paved road, the gravel road brings it from 40 to 20, right, in terms of cost. And then the paved road brings it from 40 to 15. And so gravel road to paved road is a 33% discount based relative to the previous one, or sorry, 25% discount relative to previous. This one, the modern road, is a 33% discount relative to the previous, because you move from 15 proximity to 10 proximity. Now, there's a proximity of floor of 1 in terms of cost, so no matter what, you have to pay at least 1, so it's not quite a 33% reduction, because if you're reducing it beyond 1 or 2-1, you're effectively getting less, but that is going to be pretty significant. Also, we see a really juicy plus 50% crown power in this section of the tree, and we do see kind of a few boats here at the bottom here as well. We see at the very bottom minus 10% proximity cost modifying and measuring the world. I don't think we researched this or got to research this when we played in this age, but that is a very, very strong one indeed. Especially as you get more and more proximity cost modifiers, they effectively get more powerful, right? And I think that this effectively buffs all your previous proximity cost modifiers. They really, really nerfed them quite a bit with the Pound Lock Canals, because the Pound Lock Canals were a little out of hand, and we were kind of showcasing that in some of our older content, and so that is going to be a thing. There's also 2 cabinet seats in here, an additional government reform. At least, yes, I think that's in the right section. The tree, when it gets like super wide at the bottom, gets a little ambiguous as to which section of the tree is in what. But those are kind of the big ones that we are going to be having in the scientific revolution. And interesting that the incorporation one is in... The integration one is in this section of the tree, the science one, rather than the mill section of the tree. The mill section of the tree does have some pretty good things as well, though. So let's get into that, and we are going to talk about the military revolution. So, kick things off with possible frontage, plus 10%. I think this is probably the strongest military modifier now, frontage, but I don't really understand it all that well. Tactics and discipline both also seem incredibly strong, but you are going to have your classic of a bunch of additional buildings. You also unlock a new manpower building in regimental camps, and then you are going to be having, I think there is a modifier down here that is going to be important. We see pacify population, which is a cabinet action that's really good for keeping down rebels. This is one of the really kind of nasty things about super overexpanding. We don't really overexpand that much, and so we probably don't have a good appreciation for that, but that is going to apply, I believe, a countrywide. I don't know if it's countrywide or specific, but it is going to put down rebels a little bit better. I don't know if it's country or provincial or area. We haven't messed with the interaction, but it is going to be there. We also see increase area control as a cabinet action, which is going to apply control to an entire area, which this is very, very strong. This is very, very strong, and so rather than being like long-term dev province, at this point, dev province, you're not going to pay off before the end of the game because you only have 100 or so extra years. So just increasing control in an area by 40 for an entire area is going to be really valuable, and this allows you to get value out of all those expansions. And so this really like turns on it completely turns everything on its head from you being like focused on the power base to focused on like expansion and this type of stuff. And so this is going to be very, very strong. There was another tech in here that was particularly important. I forget which. I think it might have actually been in the first tree, but we're just going to miss out on it, I think, because I'm not sure exactly what tech we are looking for that we wanted to highlight. Yeah, we're not going to... I don't think we're finding it. But the military tree, of course, you are also going to have power spikes with every single kind of military unit that you unlock. That is part of your composition when you unlock it. That's just an enormous detail. Also see trade company HQ level in here on the military tree as well. And so this is going to be quite a lot. We also see Star Fort unlocked. I don't know how much that's going to slow people down. That is the second to last fort level, and I don't have a good feel for how much increasing fort levels really affect things. But that is kind of the central theme of the age, is both the crown fighting the estates for control, the kind of changing of economies, starting to enter the industrial revolution type of thing, and you got globalized from the last age in terms of being able to trade everywhere, but now you have the need with the additional manufactories and this type of thing, pulling inputs. And you also have just the very strong, heavy-handed expansion that's facilitated by additional cabinet actions here and also additional infrastructure, both in terms of the roads and also the 40 local proximity mint, which really kind of makes it so you don't need subjects anymore. So we've like really moved from like this period where it's very, what is it, in Renaissance, you're very feudally oriented, and now you're just like, you control and seize everything yourself. And so it is a shift that is facilitated through the game mechanics, and it is a shift that really is kind of acute in the age of absolutism. Which brings us to the final age, the age of revolutions, which admittedly I haven't played into. I haven't played into on previous versions because of performance reasons, and on more recent version, I haven't played into it because I've been preferring to try and play the first 1 to 250 years on every single major start, rather than play really, really deep on one particular start. And so, kind of indulged a little bit and went into Age of Absolutism on 1 or 2 of these runs, but I haven't gotten to Age of Revolutions. And I also think that performance-wise, I might struggle in Age of Reformations. I do have a rig that is just slightly above the minimum recommended, and so that is going to be a vibe. So a lot of this is inference slash speculation, and also having read through the tech tree a couple of times and having the tech tree kind of in front of me here now. So, the first thing is the government reforms just in general that you unlock in this age are quite strong relative to the other ones. In general, we see power creep throughout everything, and so I think there's one of these that gives tax efficiency, another one that gives like plus 20% assault ability or something like this on the military, but just in general, the reforms seem quite a bit stronger. The max price for markets is going to be 500%. I think it might have been 400, no, it was 500% in Age of Absolutism, so staying there. And the institutions unlocked are the Enlightenment, Industrialization, and Levy en masse. There are going to be a lot more advances in this age than in the other ages, but you're going to have more research speed by the time you're hitting here. In general, I think that the number of advances kind of creeps up, and so this is going to be quite a bit. You get additional or minus 100% control impact on war score. So if they have 0 control, it's free. And if it's free, it's for me, baby. You are going to have more expected army size, decrease loyalty of subjects even more, minus 30. Now, minus 30 is a lot. So that might be when it starts becoming an issue. Antagonism is, again, moved more towards societal value and government type, and a little bit away from culture and religion, or the religion modifier disappearing entirely. Construction sector max level goes from plus 0.2 to plus 2 to plus 5, and we are also going to see levies get worse and less war score from battles. So it's going to become more about occupying specific areas and less about battles as things go on. So let's jump in and talk about industrialization, which, kicking things off, you get plus 10% production efficiency. That's enormous. If you haven't already started switching to a capital economy, I think you just have to at this point, because there's not an equivalent RGO efficiency that is as powerful as production efficiency, and also the RGOs aren't getting new PMs. The towns and the rural buildings aren't getting new PMs, right? But you're getting new buildings to replace the old ones, which brings us to the final tier of building, which is the mills. Now, all the mills, as far as I know, are unlocked in this age, and the mills have a very important feature. All the previous other buildings are operated by, or I haven't checked every single one to verify this, but I think the lion's share are operated by burghers. The mills are operated by laborers, who are part of the peasant estate. And so suddenly, this is going to flip the entire taxation meta, or the taxation, what's going on with taxes, on its head, because it's all going to be about exploiting the masses. I don't know what downstream effects there are for this, about this, and I also don't know if there's some sort of mechanic to represent the accumulation of capital and ownership class, because you are taking away effectively the artisan class by getting rid of the burghers, and now you have the laborers working in these factories. Who owns these factories? I don't know if there's some sort of mechanic for this. I really do hope that there is. We haven't gotten this far. But if there's an ownership class type of thing going on, that would be super sweet. Like, if a new estate appeared as a consequence of this, that would be super cool. I don't think that's what happens. I think we're just going to have... I think we're going to have something, but I don't know what it is. So that is something that I am keen on discovering. But The PMs on these buildings are also just going to be better. I think we also see the introduction of the steel good in here as well. And so I don't know if there was steel manufactory and then we get steel here. Taking a look, it does look like it's just this age. So we get the unlocking of steel. And very importantly, in this portion of the tree, in addition to having factories for everything, right? There are going to be mills or factories for most of these goods. You also unlock the railroad, which we kind of made a little bit of a song and dance on talking about upgrading road levels and this type of thing, and this being significant. But the railroad brings you from a cost of 10 to a cost of 5. And that's really, really cheap, which means you're going to be able to push control very, very strongly, like through Europe, across very large swaths of land, and control will not be this limiting factor like it is before. And so the entire nature of what you built up before really, really shifts, and you need to dynamically adapt to what's going on, because the type of metagame for building a really strong economy early on, when control is really important, obviously it becomes a lot less important when it's way more accessible, because you can gain a lot of proximity via these railroads. And also, these railroads can connect to the minting building from the previous age. So if you have 40 local proximity and then you connect that to like 5 provinces around it, or like something like this, or a couple provinces around this, then another 40 and this type of thing, you can connect these with railroads. And so they can provide rural areas next to them with this only 5 costs to transport, plus all your modifiers, maybe down to 2.5, you're getting like 37.5% or something like this. And so you're really going to be able to get a ton of economic use if something's cored and all this out of these territories as a result of railroads. It's also going to be able to zip around troops very, very quickly as well. These roads giving increasing movement costs discounts, but the one on railroads absolutely enormous. And so it will also functionally change how you can approach warfare, in that you can zip troops around really, really fast if they have a railroad. And so this is going to be a very, very big deal for you. You also have the tax assessor building, which gives extra crown power and also extra max tax, 10%, which is huge. Absolutely massive. You start being able to really extract from your people, and this also decreases the importance of max tax modifiers. Early on, max tax modifiers are insanely important for getting your economy going. As you get more and more of them, they functionally become less valuable, but this is still going to be a really, really strong one as you unlock a bigger and bigger share of your economy, effectively speaking, as you get to pull more and more stuff from the estates. And there's also more sources of satisfaction for the estates. I think that there's a particularly good government reform for satisfaction, for example, that is going to allow you to effectively afford, if you think that you need to have a certain level of satisfaction to tax your pops so they don't revolt, it is going to be important. So we have the public welfare government reform, which is going to give a state satisfaction equivalent to 2.5%. So this helps to cover the cost of taxing, effectively speaking. But yeah, most of this tree, though, is going to be these mills and manufactories. We do have the final tier of the trade center in here as well, which is going to be upgraded form, where you get more trade capacity, more trade advantage, more burger trade stuff, and so this is going to be good. There's a minus antagonism received modifier. I think that these modifiers, like discount modifier stack, so that's going to be pretty substantive. We also see towns and cities migration attraction in a tech called urbanization +1. +1's a lot, and so this is going to really push people in from the urban areas into towns and cities. So you're going to see a bit of a concentration. So the rural areas are really good for growing pops. You have more growth rate there, and so you don't. If you're maximizing pop growth, you actually don't want to urbanize everything. It actually depends on how close they are to their pop capacity and like some stuff that we're not going to go into the details on the math or this type of thing. But Age of Revolutions, you can cash in when you're industrializing, and with this migration capacity, the idea is hopefully everyone really, really moves from all the rural areas and all the pops you grew in the previous ages, get born into these manufacturing places, which I don't know what the max level is going to look like on these mills, but as you unlock the higher tier buildings, you also get more max level, and so you get economies of scale, and so if it's like plus 10 or if it's like 50 building cap or something, that represents just an enormous percentage of extra additional efficiency. And so I'm not sure to what extent the economies just kind of explode up in this time period, especially when you're urban, but I'm pretty sure you just have to urbanize and have to industrialize, and this is just the nature of the beast, and you can't do this rural economy business anymore. And so that's kind of the goodies that are in the industrialization section of the tree. Next up, we have Levy en Masse, which is going to be giving us, just off the bat, 50% manpower. And so there's not a lot of sources for percentage manpower. You do see a bit here and there, but that is by far the biggest modifier we've seen. And then we see a lot of techs that just seem kind of insane, like ignore zone of control on a tech. And so it's more about zipping around precision. We see a ton of siege ability. We see... I think that... I don't even know what that is. I think there's something that makes automating the units easier. And there's a lot of really powerful modifiers, although generally speaking, modifier, it does creep up in terms of power level. And we will also see kind of at the bottom of the tree, the last level of the conscription center for rural areas, which is going to give a lot more manpower. We see the last level of the naval base, which is going to help with proximity costs through port. Although proximity costs through port, I think is easy enough to get enough of that. I think it's kind of an easy modifier. It gives more harbor capacity too, but it is most importantly going to give a lot more sailors. I think that it's almost fresh slate on every type of building. So a lot of the buildings, there's like upgrades, and you get upgrades like every other age. But then Age of Revolutions, I feel like you get upgrades for literally every building type, whether it's manpower, all the manufacturing that's involved, this type of, all the military buildings, all the forts, just everything. There's, you get like a new level, and it's going to be in the tree somewhere. And you also, of course, have in the mill tree all of your, in addition to the fort, which we mentioned, all your higher tier units and this type of stuff for your unit power spike, which the unit power spike is quite strong. And then finally, we have the Enlightenment kind of tree in here, which is going to give extra tolerance for heathen and heretics, and we have slavery laws, so you can free all the slaves. The slaves that were so important for extracting the goods actually are probably still important. It's probably still meta to keep the slaves. Because plantations, boy oh boy, are plantations good. So what you do is you ban slavery everywhere but the Americas. Oh man, I hate it when games represent history in an uncomfortable way. Yeah, okay. But there are slavery laws. You can ban slavery if you like, or you can play the meta. And then we will see other texts in here. We see additional literacy, minus war score cost, extra government reforms, more power projection, 50% crown power, which is a very strong modifier, 5% tax efficiency, which is really strong to see in a tech. We see more trade range, and trade level or company headquarters, but at this point I don't know how important trade range is. I think you might just range everything. I think maybe if you didn't take anything that had trade range in it, in terms of each age you get to pick a flight of a focus on one of the three, diplo, admin, or military, and maybe it's the case that without taking one of those that has trade range, you need the trade range here, but there is a little bit of trade range. There's extra cabinet seat, which is going to be strong, especially with all the good cabinet actions you unlock in the previous age. Like, increased control in an area is just insane. So that means wherever the farthest off area, you're just like, boop, plus 40 control for this entire area on top of whatever you manage to get. And if you have that mint building, that's like 80 flat control. You can just 100 control an area that you have no business 100 controlling, right? Which is, shout out to, Great Britain and India, this type of thing. And so I think that's most of what we see in here, though. I'm not seeing anything that is too standoutish at the bottom of the tech tree for enlightenment, which is actually a little bit of a shame. I mean, we do see the max level of the line for ships of the line, and so the galleons and this type of thing, and maybe actually navy power is probably going to be a lot more important in this phase of the game. Overall, this section of the tree looks a little bit weaker, but in general, the techs themselves just seem quite strong. And also, it seems more front-loaded towards the front of the tree as well with the Enlightenment. So, a bit of an interesting one. Probably will be focused a little bit on industrialization tree, just because we only care about economics, even though the military tree looks absolutely bonkers for this in the age of revolutions. And so, yeah, that is going to, but the shift that I'm really curious about, and really curious that there's like content for this, because it's super cool if there is that you shift from burghers to laborers. And it's hard to, the entire game up to this, if it's a building, and it's an urban building, you got the artisans, you got the burghers. And so the shift off of the burghers is really, really, really fascinating. And I think probably a good way of representing that we've frozen again. Probably a good way of representing that this industrialization thing. I'm just wondering if there's anything extra on top of that, which I don't know the answer to because I haven't played that deep. But that is the final age, the age of revolutions. And that's our video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, the standard YouTube algorithm things that are now so ingrained into my mind that I actually don't think I can outro a video without saying them. Like, I think I physically am incapable. They're like muscle memory. It's just like... But also a great way to support the channel is if you knew you were going to buy the game anyways, if you pre-order through the store and use our code Generalist, you will not get a discount, but 12% of the sale will go our way, and so this would help out us quite a lot. This is going to be a pretty big source of income for us total in this year, and so that would be very much appreciated if you're going to be buying the game anyways. If you're not going to be buying the game, don't worry about it, and if you have another creator you like more, and they are covering EU5 at all, I would check with them and see if they have a code, this type of thing. And of course, if you want Paradox to get all the money, you can of course just not use anyone's code. But again, that's our video. I hope you enjoyed. We already said that, and other than that, have a good one. Bye bye now.